Sarah Travers, a journalist in Northern Ireland. I have my own company as well, Bespoke Communications. So, you know, like everyone else, the world was sort of turned on its head for a while, and the world of work has changed, but it's still going on. And in fact, business is booming. But how do we educate young people on what the world of work is like? So that's really what the series has been about so far. It is supported in the background by three of the biggest firms located here in Northern Ireland: Allstate, Herbert Smith Freehills, and EY. They're very modestly in the background, giving up their time, because these wonderful firms are all growing, as I said, in Northern Ireland, and they need a future workforce too, a skilled workforce. So that really is the raison d'etre behind tonight. Previous events you might have been to, we have recordings of all of these too. If you weren't there, have covered the future world of work. How do you get into it? We've looked at, you know, what's the best pathway to go on for a young person these days. Is there a correct pathway? We've looked at apprenticeships. We've looked at how do you get work experience. We've looked at onboarding of people in this remote working world, the hybrid workplace as well. And we also ran a very successful session on skills and what skills the world of work was actually looking for. What did industry need right now? And each time we run a poll at the end and we try to establish, you know, what is it you want to see next? So skills was high on the agenda from the last poll. And this time we listened to the requests to run a session on how to develop skills in young people, and not just technical skills. We're talking about soft skills, people skills, communication skills. So we have organizations here tonight to help. We'd love to know where you're joining us from, who's listening in today. Are you a parent? Have you a young person with you? You know, let us know, and please feel free to use the Q&A function. You'll see it there if you want to ask any questions. We will do our very, very best to answer. But we have three fantastic organizations here tonight. From Young Enterprise Northern Ireland, we have its CEO, Carol Fitzsimons. So good evening to you, Carol. I wonder, first of all, would you be able to say a quick hello to everybody, introduce yourself and your organization?
So hi, everybody. Yes, I'm Carol. I am both the chief executive, but also a mother to a 14-year-old boy who's in his first year of GCSEs and an 8-year-old girl who's in P5. So having worked in Young Enterprise, where we develop enterprise and entrepreneurship skills in young people throughout primary and post-primary, it's quite interesting now to see that on the other side as a parent.
I'm sure it's always very different when you're actually walking the walk as well. But brilliant, Carol. Looking forward to talking to you throughout the session. From Foresee Your Future, which is a brilliant organization, please welcome Rosemary Stalker. So Rosemary, yours is an industry-led social enterprise, I believe.
Yes, it is, Sarah. And thank you very much for inviting me to be here this evening. I too am a mother, and also a stepmother and grandmother to four, three of which are teenage young people at the moment. And so I understand exactly some of the dilemmas that young people today are going through, and the choices and trying to navigate the complex workspace. I founded Foresee Your Future a couple of years ago to try and do exactly that, to try and give every young person the best opportunity to help them navigate and find out about themselves so that they can make more empowered career choices going forward.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for setting up your organization. And again, I'm looking forward to hearing more about what exactly you can do for young people. We're also delighted tonight to welcome from the Chartered Institute of Building, Jenna Bell. Jenna, welcome.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you. Yes, my name's Jenna, and I am the Business Development Manager here at the CIOB. So I look after our top 100 construction companies. I work alongside the HR department and help the managers and the MDs and the directors begin their journey with the CIOB so they can gain chartered membership with us. So it's a very exciting role, and no 2 days are ever the same. I'm not a parent, but I'm auntie, so I hope that still counts. I'm an auntie of twins. They're just reaching their terrible twos, and they were dressing up as doctors today. So that's a route they're going down. But I am very interested in children's education. I've been a teacher for a number of years in Hong Kong.
Wow.
And I've also ran a local swim school here in Northern Ireland. And I'm very keen on getting involved and just shedding a bit of light into the construction careers that are out there for our young.
Absolutely. So thank you. We have three, as I said, terrific panelists here. If you have any questions at all, they'd be delighted to attempt to answer them for you and hopefully be able to signpost your young person into getting some kind of skills or experience of the world of work. And hopefully, or maybe you might be enlightened with a few career choices, thoughts about the future that you hadn't had before now. And I know Jenna didn't set out to work in the construction industry, and look at her here today, and we'll hear more about that, because we can think one thing when we're 17, 18, and then, as we probably all know, opportunity knocks and you open a door and you try something, and hey ho, you find yourself doing something maybe completely different than you thought you would be doing at school. So there's no right or wrong, but you definitely can be doing something right now to equip yourself and to educate yourself on what actually is out there. Jobs perhaps we hadn't even thought about. And I know I have an 18-year-old daughter who's on a gap year from university at the minute. She's her heart set on working, studying animation at university. That's what she's always wanted to do from the year dot. But we shall see, because already opportunity has been knocking for her. She's been very lucky and has been working on a film set during her gap year. And suddenly she's learned about all these jobs that she didn't even know existed. So, as I said, this event is really designed for parents, for guardians of young people, but we hope that maybe some young people have joined us too. So feel free to ask a question if you would like some information. You probably know much more than some of I know for me, for example, there are jobs out there I didn't even know existed. And the thing is, there are new jobs coming on board all of the time. So please do use the Q&A function to send in any questions for our panelists. So let's get stuck in. Let's start with you, I suppose, Rosemary. You talked about, setting up Foresee Your Future to help young people navigate future careers. How would you describe the skills landscape that young people are finding themselves thrown into the bear pit at the minute? What's it like out there? What do they need?
Okay, well, as we know, everything is going very digital. In fact, this event here tonight, we're connecting digitally. So the world of work is changing rapidly, just like the rest of our lives are changing by technology. Soft skills were always really important to employers. And I would say that they're even more important now in a digital world. And these are things such as creativity and problem solving, empathy, communication skills, resilience and determination and teamwork, because these are things that technology can't do, that rely on human beings. So, these are even more important now than they ever were before, I think.
But are these being taught in schools at the minute?
Not directly. And I think one of the challenges is all the different forms that young people are being asked to fill in. Employers are asking them to comment on these things. They've got all the exam results, but these are not attributes that schools help young people determine what they're good at. So one of the reasons why we set up Foresee Your Future, and the way that we engage in Foresee Your Future, we basically play a series of games. And the games are representative of the different work sectors that we're experiencing today. And we are specifically putting young people in situations where we're testing their empathy, or we're testing their creativity, their problem solving. And then we suck all that information back from them in a very fun way and present them with a positive profile, telling them what we saw compared to their peer group. And we're doing this at scale, 600 to 700 young people a time with 150 volunteers each time in every council district in Northern Ireland. And in a normal school day, we have multiple schools all playing games. And then a couple of months later, when they're back in September, we're going to present them with a positive profile and link them back into some of the team members and what they thought was their favorite game. Because what we're really trying to help young people understand is how they are amongst others, how they think, what drives them, how they do things, and what they're naturally good at. And, you know, as parents, we all know that hearing a young person hearing from your parents, oh, you're really good at that, isn't as important as hearing your peer group say to you that you're really good at something. And that's what we're trying to create.
In fact, that we can often dismiss what our parents say to us and not listen at all. But how interesting. I love this whole concept, and I love this whole concept of this positive profile. So might come back to that and revisit that. So that's digital skills and that creativity and the problem solving. In the world of entrepreneurship though, Carol, what do you see as the skills that are needed?
So it's certainly all of those skills that Rosemary has already mentioned, but it's also building on that. It's the ability to be resilient and to adapt to change. And I see already you have a question there around COVID. And to me, one of the skills that employers has looked for the most during COVID is that ability for people to deal with things just constantly changing and get on board and do things differently. And I think whilst as a parent, we can look and say our young people maybe have missed certain things and done things differently. They've also experienced things that we have never experienced. So they now know very well how to work digitally online, which is a skill that employers will want. But they've also demonstrated in bucket loads their resilience and their ability to adapt. And for us in Young Enterprise, we're always very focused on entrepreneurship. So we get young people, they set up, run their own businesses at school to learn from the experience, to learn whether it's something they want to do, whether it's something they enjoy, or equally if it's something that's not for them. But it's also because as we look forward, you can see that entrepreneurship and self-employment at a most basic level is important, because sectors that we're focusing on, such as creative industries and a lot of those skilled areas, actually will quite often require you to run your own business. And it's no good being vocationally and technically really good if you actually aren't very good at getting the money in or pricing things or setting a fair price for the work that you do. So for us, I think it's building on those skills and creating that self-awareness of what you have as a strength, but also constantly building. They will make mistakes and they will get things wrong. And probably I find as a parent, one of the things we struggle with the most is not swooping in and fixing it for them. So we need to let them go down that journey a little bit of making mistakes. How would you fix it? If it's a low risk exam and they haven't revised, rather than sitting over them, let them go in and maybe not do so well to make those mental connections, so that the next time they come to, they understand why it is really important that they maybe learn from that mistake and do better.
Maybe it's the parents need to go back to school and learn how to parent better.
Very hard. It's very hard being a parent. And every child is so different.
Years ago, maybe it was that sort of tough love mentality, but then I suppose a lot of parents now just worry so much about their young people, and maybe that they weren't around enough or whatever to support them. But very interesting points there. So Jenna, not wanting to just ask about the construction industry, but I'm wondering, you know, we've heard again about resilience, adaptability, creativity, problem solving, empathy, knowing their strengths, knowing what they are good at, and that self-awareness piece. Would they be skills that you would be looking for in the construction industry, or have you any advice?
Yeah, I agree with, I know, echo everything you've said. I read an article just this morning and it said, one of the lines was that we just need to be more human. And I thought that was fantastic. I thought that just really puts it into a nutshell. I know that with digital leadership is on the increase, and you're right, we need more skills like sympathy and self-awareness and self-management. And even from a personal perspective, working from home and because of COVID, those skills are needed on a daily basis, especially from leadership. I think the other area I'd like to highlight is the ability to have an open mind. And Carol, you've touched on it there, and the ability to change. I feel that especially over this last year, the only constant for all of us has been change. I see that within the construction sector in terms of careers. You might have an employee who starts off as a bricklayer and then moves over to a site manager, and then perhaps a QS, and then a director. So their career is a constant element of change. And I think we really need to encourage our young not to be afraid of that change. If we look at things like EDI and the green agenda and net zero, they're all relatively new concepts that weren't around back in my day, but each of them require, an open-minded approach. And just to give you a quick example, a colleague was telling me today that the very first net zero McDonald's restaurant has just opened in the UK. And this is a building full of firsts from the ground up. They're using recycled concrete for the curbs. The cladding on the outside of the building is made from computer keyboards, old computer keyboards. And the roof of the McDonald's is made from toasters and blenders.
Wow.
So it's mind-boggling. And one of our members actually is a fellow at the CIOB, and he was the project manager for that restaurant. And he started his third level career as a lawyer. So it just keeps coming back to that element of just try to be open-minded. If things don't go to plan, it's okay. It doesn't have to be that set structure that I certainly grew up with.
Okay, so as well, we need to sort of step back from feeling anxious about not knowing it all or not understanding it all. Have some freedom and maybe find some joy instead of worry all of the time. Great points. Shmuel has sent in a question, which I'm sure everybody can see there. General question to all. Carol already alluded to it. He wants to ask, what according to you will be the impact of COVID-19 and the pandemic on the shaping of future professional and occupational skills? So actually, maybe there have been some positives throughout the pandemic that we will be taking forward, Carol.
Yeah, I think, we have to stop thinking about careers as a single future point. And you alluded to that. Even, at my stage, I run a charity, but I actually started in manufacturing and production manufacturing. So that has always been that way. I think one of the things that COVID has just highlighted is that change is going to be constant, and the expectation to continue to learn. So not being scared of that, but it's exactly as Jenna said, that the things that we had learnt, we use and we change slightly and we use them in a different way. And that's really the skill that everybody has to have. It's just adapting and the speed and being expected to change. So, but I do think one of the consequences of COVID is the change in relationships. And there will probably be this higher level of digital communication, which again goes back to the human point that Jenna talks about. And, in computer industry, they talk about, computer to computer interaction, but they'll also talk about human to computer interaction or human to human. And our ability to be human is the thing that will stand out the most. So it's really, taking that on board and making sure that you have an awareness of what are the things that your child enjoys and nurturing that so that they can constantly play to those strengths and build on them and not be scared of things changing, because that's to be expected.
I mean, there's no ignoring the relationship side of things, this hybrid working, the remote working. You know, I would feel very fearful if I was a young person having to start out with a company. Where does that beautiful social interaction that was such the fun that you used to have at the start of a new job when you met other people and, you know, maybe went out with them on a weekend or something like that. Ooh, where is that now? And that's a bit sad, really. Rosemary, what do you think?
Well, I think we probably find that more sad than future generations do, because young people today, you know, they're engaged in social media all of the time. So they live their lives in this pseudo-human, pseudo-virtual reality in the way they're interacting. Whereas we're used to, we've got to have a meeting, we need to meet somebody face to face. So I think we've probably had a more difficult job in that transition than future generations do. And of course, all we have to talk about is if a piece of digital equipment breaks down in the home, is it the parent that fixes it, or is it the young person? So I do think that you know, sometimes, and there's a broader point behind this, in that sometimes as parents we transfer our concerns and our anxieties and our worries onto our children, in the same way that we transfer our wishes and aspirations onto our children. And if there was one thing to take away, which I think is resonating with everything that we're saying here today, is help your young person understand who they are, and help them be the best version of that they can. And that means, you know, that they will understand things they don't like, things they do like, things they're good at, how they approach things. And I think that's such a powerful message. And I think the future world of work is really looking for people who are able to do that, and that human side of things, and helping us be the best. Now, that doesn't mean we still don't have to learn how to calculate, how to process, and it doesn't mean that there are some jobs there that still require us to have certain structures and organization. But you're doing so from a point of view of understanding what you're bringing to that organization, whether it's your own business or whether it's another organization. So having that understanding of your value and what you give is so powerful going forward.
I'm going to stay with you, Rosemary, just on that point. I find that very interesting, because obviously, you know, we're preconditioned and we pass our values and we condition our children, even if we think we're being really open-minded about things. You know, they watch and they see and they learn from that, and then they can ultimately, eventually, maybe choose to not think the way we've always thought. But you said there, help your child understand who they are. Should we be involved with that in that process at all, or does that hinder them if we get involved? Do we need to hand over to organizations like you to help them find out who they are?
Sometimes it's easier if somebody else does it. Yes. Sometimes it's easier.
Your child to drive and all of those. If anybody's been through that.
Not a good idea. And you know, it's fascinating, because I as an engineer, I was very conscious of not stereotyping my daughter, and Christmas time I wrapped the presents up in two different wrapping papers. One wasn't pink and one wasn't blue, but there were different wrapping papers, because inside there I had a little racetrack for my daughter, and she must have been about 6 or 7. And she opened it amongst other gifts, and she looked at me and she said, "Father Christmas has made a mistake." you know, and what can you do? So you can try.
Silly Santa that time. Yeah, absolutely. Jenna, what about you? Do you have anything to add to that? How do you let a young person, I mean, because you've already hinted at all the places you've been that have been terribly exciting before you ended up where you are.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think it's a really powerful message to just encourage your child to use their strengths and see it as their value and lead on that. Sometimes I think we feel like we have to act a certain way, or we have to have certain qualities, but I think it's a beautiful concept to say, use your strengths and lead with your strengths, because you can't do everything. And especially in our company, we we create our teams in terms of various strengths. So we're going to have somebody who's fantastic at presentation. We're going to have the mathematical genius. We're going to have the sales expert. And that's how we put our teams together. And I think that's a brilliant place to be. Just use your own strength and then lean on your work colleagues who have their strengths.
I don't know if anybody's listened to the podcast 13 Minutes to the Moon about the Apollo moon landings. It's absolutely brilliant and really good, actually, about the average age of the Apollo space mission was 27, and nobody knew how to get to the moon. And some people came, you know, they all came from different backgrounds, but they all had their own brilliance. Whether one was an engineer, one was good with computers, one whatever. And they all came together with these different personalities, and they were a team, and they worked as a team. And the thing is, the person in charge of them was so amazing too, because he literally gave them the freedom, and he trusted each of them to be able to deliver, and said, you know, even if we fail, we do so as a team. This is all together, you know, and it's just actually what we're saying here. So that happened back then, but maybe we're mollycoddling children just too much now, and we have to let them just be. So you've talked about and introduced your organizations, but let's delve a little deeper, Carol, into what you're actually doing right now. You know, maybe some parents here don't know whether Young Enterprise is in their young person's school. How do they get involved? Can you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, so Young Enterprise is very much about business skills and bringing the world of business to life. You'll have heard about entrepreneurs that quite often go to university and drop out of university because they're passionate about business. So academic isn't always the best learning method for everyone, whereas we approach it with experiential learning by doing. So what we literally do is give them, put them together as a team. They establish their own little mini business, and at P7 over 6 weeks, they'll run one. In 4th or 5th form, they can run one over 10 weeks, or in 6th form, they'll run it for a full year. And we actually have some students doing trade fairs out in the shopping centres next week, and they'll produce a product and they sell it. So they're learning about finance, they're learning about marketing, they're learning about sales, communication. You will get maybe the top achiever, the most confident student becomes a managing director. And after a few weeks, we discover, well, maybe they're not the best people manager, and the group meet and discuss that. And maybe they get sacked and they put somebody else in. And those are hard life lessons to learn, but the students are not scared to be brutal, because they have a date, they have sales to be made. They will produce things and maybe they won't go according to plan. They'll make mistakes, and the good ones will learn from that and say, well, okay, well, what can we do differently? We still have a selling opportunity tomorrow. So, you know, maybe they haven't, we've had ones, I saw Rosemary's lovely painted mug there. We had ones that painted mugs and they hadn't produced enough on time. So they packaged up a blank mug with some paints and brushes in a bit of cellophane and sold them that way, actually for more money, as a DIY craft. And that's what you're looking for in business all the time, that quick thinking. How can I change it? How can I problem solve? And ultimately, it's just bringing problem solving to life. And that's always what we're looking for as an employer. And from our point of view, it's balancing that push for their academic results with actual hard skills that they can show, be it when they're going for a job interview, university interview. Quite often it's maybe just as simple as their first Saturday job, but that can be enough to get them on the ladder of employment and get them excited just about achieving something.
So even getting that Saturday job and that, you know, an extra bit of work has been challenging again this last couple of years. Just the opportunities haven't been as readily available. I'm just wondering if you could sum up, because you've been going for some time now, but what do you hear? What are the benefits that you see of young people that go through the program? There must be some standout people.
There are, and I am just smiling because they're not scared to ask questions. So I see Sophie in the questions there asking me for top trade fair tips. Sorry, Kat's come to join me, everybody. There we go. Really,
yes, Sophie, participating in the trade fair next week, would you give any advice? There you go.
Yeah, but it's the same thing. It's building your confidence. We find at the start they're terrified to speak to anybody to sell, and then after sort of 10 minutes they speak to somebody, maybe some stranger who is not a member of their family comes along and buys something and gives them money, and that's the moment the light turns on, because they go, oh, they actually must believe in our product. And usually by the end, after 2 hours, you've seen them, Sarah, they'll literally be meeting people at the door and chasing them down and saying, do you want to buy my product? And it's that experiential, be it with Young Enterprise or other organizations. But I would also highlight, if you do things outside of schools, be it scouting or guides or working through the church, any sort of volunteering, you will constantly be developing skills. And one of the things I see when I interview young people is that we ask them about their skills. They will tell us about what they've done in school and what the qualification is. And if you've a good interviewer, you probe a bit, and then it turns out maybe they've raised £5,500 for a trip with the GB. And you're like, well, that would be an important thing to tell me about. I interviewed a student who'd set up a website for their parents to trade internationally, but they hadn't studied computers. So when I said, do you have computer skills? They went, no, not really, because they meant I don't have a qualification in that. So it's doing that bit of understanding what your skills are, but also being able to articulate those. And that's where parents can help, because that's where parents can say to their young person, you're really good at working with other people or working in a team, or you're really good at presenting and reinforcing the skills that they have, so that when they're asked a question, it's actually at the front of their head to mention it.
Instead of all those things that they think count, which are the qualifications, when actually, you know, you'll just be the same as everybody else with the qualifications. It's what makes you stand out, because you're different. The fact that you can set up a website and you've no computer skills, say that. You stand out already. Brilliant, brilliant advice there. Rosemary, then tell me a little bit more. I mean, I love the whole positive profile that you create, but I have to admit, heard of you. I didn't know about this wonderful, wonderful organization. So for anybody else out there, how do you get involved? How do you get your school involved? How do I get my young person to you?
So this year we're running an event in every council district in Northern Ireland, basically in the month of June, and we will shortly be launching registration for schools. So basically, through the councils, working with the councils, we will have an open call for schools to sign up, and it's whole year groups. It's year 9s. So we're doing that deliberately. Because we want to give young people a taster of the different types of industries and sectors in Northern Ireland before they make their GCSE choices in year 10. So that's deliberate. And then what happens, it's in a normal school day, it's completely free to the schools. So we deliberately don't have any selection at all. So every school in Northern Ireland is free to try and get in. Obviously this year we're limited to 7,500 young people. In future years, we're hoping that every year 9 in Northern Ireland, and then future years, we want to go back into primary school and go forward into older young people. But we use game theory basically, because one of the things that young people love to do is play games. So the idea is they come in and they're instantly dropped to some sort of attached. So you have a scenario. One of them, for example, is a race to net zero. So they're in a team of 6. So even though there are 600, 700 young people playing, they're playing in teams of 6. And in that 20 minutes, they've got to meet an objective. And, you know, it's really interesting, because the very first time we ran this, it was a pilot in 2019, in June 2019. We had 3 young girls from a all-girls grammar school walk towards one of our games called Code Home. And they were with their teacher, and they thought it was like a career fair. And they walked in and said, oh, I don't really like computers. Sadly, their teacher said, oh, you don't have to do it. And then one of our volunteers says, actually, you do. So everyone tries everything. And that's intentional. And we will find things that each person loves, hates, finds easy, finds challenging. And that's the whole point. Because if you don't try, you won't know. And it's back to, you know, you can't be what you can't see. And some of these industries, some of these sectors are quite daunting if you haven't got the language, if you don't know what's going on in them. They seem, oh, I couldn't do that. And we're trying to bring all of that so that, you know, back to Carol's experiential learning, by playing the game, young people experience what it's truly like to solve problems, be creative. We have an escape room, for example, where they have to solve all these puzzles and things to get out and work as a team. And then we have a few minutes at the end of each session, each rotation, where they are asked if they met the objective, or did they actually win, or did they just miss it? And then the most important question of the day is we ask them, was there anyone in your team a star at that? And the first time we did this, it was quite emotional, because for some of the young people, they're used to being told they're stars all the time. They get lots of positive affirmation at home, but some of the kids are not used to hearing it. And there was one little lad who was told that he was a star in a particular game for his manual dexterity. And he looked up at us and he said, "Could you tell my teacher?" Oh. You know, it's very, very important. So then we take all that data. We have about 150 volunteers, people all in their sort of branded clothing from employers across Northern Ireland. And then at the end of the session, we gather all the data, and then we send back to the young person their profile, and we engage them with our portal, so that we then use that profile to help them signpost what sort of things they might be interested in. So for example, signposting to young enterprise. Now I know young enterprise is already linked into the schools, but we can find out those young people who have that entrepreneur gene through the games that we play. We can understand those young people who absolutely hate numbers, or those who really love programming, or those who are really good with their hands. And the beauty of, if you're really good with your hands, you could work as a surgeon, you could work as a technician. And part of it is just making young people aware of the vast range of opportunity, and having a basis for them to go and explore that little bit more, because we definitely don't want to come back to them with definitive answers. It's about just helping them find their pathway and signposting all the opportunities.
I look forward to hearing in 10 years' time when they all send you letters and they're at NASA now or they're wherever, and it all started that day in school when they did their game. Brilliant. And in terms of construction and the construction industry, Jenna, you've talked there very excitedly about the net zero McDonald's, and that took thinking outside the box, literally. But there was a big problem, and the construction industry as well. The world of construction has, I suppose, had to change, has really had to change, because you were, not you personally, Jenna, but obviously, something had to be done to make buildings more sustainable and environmentally friendly. What are you doing in schools at the minute to, I suppose, address some of the imbalances, get the right kind of people? What makes a good employee of the construction industry?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. We actually have an extra arm to the CIOB, and we call it Inspiring Tomorrow's Leaders. So it's just been plugged into our new 3-year corporate plan, and it's really, really exciting. We ask our members to give up some of their voluntary time to become part of this committee, this Inspiring Tomorrow's committee. Then we work alongside a lot of universities and colleges in the north and the south. We put together events. So one of the events we have coming up in June is called the Student Challenge. And again, quite similar, although it's more hands-on approach. We bring our students into the room and we give them a real life scenario. So I think last year it was the football stadium, and we told them we need to do some work in this football stadium, but you've got a restaurant on this side of the stadium, you've got a hotel on that side of the stadium. How are you going to carry on with this construction work? There's a little bit of human Sudoku, setting up your road and when you're going to do the work and how you're going to manage all these people and issues that might be coming along, and economic issues, social issues. And we give them a real life situation and let them run with it. And then we bring our local companies in, and then after there's an award, and there's a student of the award, and there's a team. But afterwards, there's a presentation from our construction companies that addresses all the challenges that they have been dealing with during that day. So it's a really nice way for them to see the theory, have a go at it, and then hear the practicalities from a real life construction company.
And I know even if we look at sort of gender imbalance within the construction industry, it's often been seen as a very male dominated, and probably still is a very male dominated industry to go into. But they're crying out for women to get involved, aren't they?
They are. The percentages they're in construction where females are at 13%. So that's very, very small.
Very small.
Very, very small indeed. But in my experience at COB, I've found an awful lot of organisations over here that are trying very hard to increase that. You've got women in construction, you've got women in business. There's an awful lot going on in Ireland in particular, I think, to try and change those statistics.
Yeah, and it's not obviously just in the construction sector as well, but I suppose it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be out on the building site. You can do for some women, they'd love that and it would be a great opportunity, but maybe they just haven't been encouraged or exposed to it to give it a go. So again, it's trying to get the opportunities and as many opportunities as possible. I'm just wondering, I'm looking at the time and some questions coming in. In your experience, how can young people gain, where we know that they'd all love to meet your organizations and do all of the exciting things that you've been talking about, but for the parents that are trying to equip their young people, and if they don't just get access to one of your great programs, what can they be doing now to demonstrate, to get noticed, to say, hi, can I find out more about your organization? Can I get some work experience? We know it's so difficult for young people to organize. I know when I worked at the BBC, there was all sorts of insurance legislation about having a young person come into a busy working newsroom. But Carol, what would you say to people now who are thinking, just want them to get as much experience as possible and get noticed and be able to demonstrate their skills, especially maybe if they don't have that confidence?
Yeah. So confidence comes with practice. Confidence comes with experience, and I think I suppose I go back to be it volunteering but also digital opportunities. That's again something that's happened with COVID. A lot more organizations and industries have been able to take things online and make them free. So if you are passionate about computer science, there will be lots of things that you can now learn about computer science online. There will be live webinars, there will be organizations in Northern Ireland and beyond, because once we've gone digital, you can go to all those, global places. So, depending on what it is that you're interested in, literally take to Google, search them up and see what's available. But also, if it's the hospitality industry or the events industry, quite often local festivals are looking for people to just put on a t-shirt and volunteer for a few hours. That's still getting out, meeting people, working as part of a team, learning more about the things that you're good at. But the key is sometimes to, yes, as parents, to search those things for them, but also to, again, listen and hear what it is they're wanting to do. I'd say the point there about degrees. I think learning and education isn't wasted, but it's about how do you take that and transfer it into the thing that you're passionate about. And if you, for example, a lot of people in Northern Ireland do A-level maths and therefore maybe traditionally would go on to study accountancy, that doesn't mean you have to become an accountant. It just means you're excellent at numbers. So then maybe as you start to think, well, actually, what are the future careers with numbers? Data analytics, industries that are using, numbers, then start to again look and see, are any of those employers doing online work experience or just even online webinars where they talk about what they do more.
Mm-hmm. And how does online work experience actually work?
It's it's not ideal, but nor is working from home with a cat landing at your lap, but it's the way we're all working right now. But sometimes it can actually give you really strong insights as well, because it's people coming on, and Jenna, you mentioned the role of volunteers, just hearing from other people about their jobs, what they've done and what their journey has been in itself is helpful. So, online work experience, if you have somebody coming on, I was out with one of the net zero companies last week with Young Enterprise filming in relation to net zero, but one of those guys studied history and politics. and then went and did one of the academies to change and transfer the skills. And that's what we talk about, you know, transferable skills. So, you know, he's not studying in the degree, but he's found something he's passionate about. And for me, hearing from somebody like him as a young person helps you to really, you know, understand that at every point, that is not the end point of your journey, and you can change and adapt and move the decisions you've made as you go along. And that's so important.
I don't know anybody nearly now that would stay on the right path, because we worry so much. They feel so young when they go away to university. How could they possibly know? And you've talked about our comment that has come in there about the student loans are a burden. You know, is that degree really the be all and the end all? But one of my friend's daughters actually had been studying occupational therapy, and all throughout COVID, she was over in Aberdeen doing this, and she just didn't feel quite right about it. But part of her experience or work experience was in a nursing home, where she was, you know, actually amazing with the older people, but she kept going, well, I don't really want to be a carer. I need to get my occupational therapy. And then she went, do you know what? I do want to be a carer. But then she thought, I think I'll run a nursing home and I'll do it properly and I'll really care for those older people. But she's going to see out her degree just to have it done. But she's already had that opportunity opened up. It doesn't mean that she's failed or she's quitting. She's going to finish. And then she's found her passion now. So that's incredible. Rosemary, what would you say then in terms of getting noticed? And you know, you don't want to be plaguing people with emails. You don't know how to make that introduction. How do you talk to somebody in a company?
Can I come back to what you just said there, Sarah, though, just first, if you don't mind? And that's with regard to sort of this whole parity of pathway, in that, you know, having a degree is not a bad thing, but it's not the only way. And that young person that you're just describing there, we need to be really careful that we're not sort of viewing the career path as the preeminent pathway. You know, the apprenticeship pathway, the entrepreneurial pathway, and the fact that, you know, we don't have these hermetically sealed chambers anymore that, you know, if I finish this degree and I go into this company, that's it for life. We've got so much more flexibility. So I think it's important that every time we get a chance to talk about something like this, that we really get the message out there. It's what's right for your young person at that point in time. And if they're not academic, if they learn through doing, don't get the debt. Don't sort of burden them from the beginning, or burden yourself at that stage. So then that leads me on to your question, which is how do you find out? And sort of really building on a lot of what Carol has said. You know, it is about volunteering. It is about extracurricular activity. It is about going and finding out online. And one of the things that we do is
a little bit of a problem with this.
And sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, there's a little bit of break up there, Rosemary.
I tell you what I'll do is I'll stop moving my hands, which is really difficult for me. I'll try and talk without moving my hands. So one of the things we've tried to do to try and help this is we've created career heroes. So our company volunteers, and they go through a training program and they produce a little profile. And depending on how much we get done between now and June, depends how good those profiles are. But the idea is that exactly as you were describing, you understand by talking to people, there are different pathways, so that we're reinforcing all the time that there are many different ways of getting to this point, and to the point that's right for that young person. And I step back and I think of this, and I think about every young person, if you like, a bundle of talent and possibility, and random happenstance as to what they end up doing, depending on who they've met, who some relative happens to be, or who their parents happen to be. And we need to be more systematic about it. And that's exactly the reason why we at Foresee Your Future want them to have all these different experiences, so that we help accelerate that journey of discovery into what they like doing and don't like doing, and then relate it to the spectrum of industries or careers or roles that might be possible. And we're not trying to, you know, remember the old personality tests that sort of used to have, and you know, people coming up to you and telling you, oh, you're going to be an astronaut, or you're going to, you know, I mean, we're not trying to be that prescriptive. We're just trying to give young people the awareness and the understanding. And it is a bit like mini work experiences. It's not as good as the real thing in that if you're not in a company for a couple of weeks, you learn an awful lot more through osmosis. But it won't surprise you to know that there's another event we're thinking of that we don't want to announce yet, which is for slightly older young people around the time that they want to make career choices, exactly about pathways. So we're really trying to collaborate with organizations, businesses, all sorts of organizations, to just find a way to demystify this for young people, parents, and teachers, because it's equally hard for teachers to find out information. And our belief is that the employers and people working in companies or in their own businesses actually have the latest information, and connecting young people to the people who are out there at the coalface designing the new roles is the most efficient way of doing this. And
well, absolutely. And when you have that visit from the industry person into your school, I can remember the person that came to my school, and I thought, hold on, you can do journalism, you can get paid to talk on the radio and interview people. Really? Really? I'll be doing that. Thank you very much. That was a lady called Anne-Marie McAleese from the BBC. So yeah, she inspired me. Jenna, what about you? There are a couple of questions there. Obviously, we've talked about whether we need the degree of the third level education necessarily, but also how do we get in front of some of the big construction companies? How do you even begin to get noticed there?
I mean, I have to say that I get really excited whenever I hear Rosemary talk about her gaming and her processes. I kind of feel like I've missed out on that opportunity. So I think it's fantastic to have that for our youth now, because I do remember my career teacher saying a doctor, nurse, or work in Tesco's, and that were the options, you know, whenever I was at school. And I remember, well, no, even now I'm still learning about roles in construction. You know, just last week I learned about a civil diving engineer, a role that I've never heard of before. And I love swimming. I'm massive into swimming. It's a huge hobby of mine. And, you know, if somebody had told me when I was a child, you could put on a wetsuit and throw on an oxygen mask and dive around the world and get paid for it, I mean, that would have been like gold.
Never too late, Jenna. It's never too late.
Yeah, I know. One day.
Parents are going, hold on a minute, scrap that job. I'm going to go to one of these courses. Yeah.
One day. However, you know, it dovetails with the degree, because if you don't have a degree, it might not be as easy to fly around the world and have that career all over the world. You know, CIOB give you that international qualification, so you can do that. So the, you know, the two are very, very important. But I think in order for our young people to stand out from the crowd, I think knowledge is the tool, and knowledge is the key. And again, something I have just learned, that LinkedIn actually allow our 13-year-olds to have their very own profile on LinkedIn. And the CIOB ourselves, we have international pages. We've got a CIOB page in Ireland, in Dubai, in the UK, in Australia. So again, with construction, but if you are interested in learning more about those roles and learning what a day in the life might look like, go ahead and join those pages, because it's a great way even just to start your knowledge building. And I'm pretty sure there are similar pages in various industries and sectors out there.
Well, you've all made the world of work sound incredibly exciting. It all, yeah, sounds like an episode of The Apprentice at times as well. Helen Bowman as well, lovely Helen, has joined us tonight, and she has said, has anyone's children had a Barclays life skills session in school? It's a great way to learn money skills, work skills, and people skills. So all of those things very vital. While you're taking over the world and doing all your wonderful things, you still need to kind of be responsible with the old cash. And thank you very much, Helen, for that. I'm just watching the time, only 5 minutes to go. Where does the time go at all? I don't know if anybody else has another burning question. Now would be the time to pop it in there before we let everybody go. It's very important to know that we are recording this session. So if you feel this would be useful for anyone else, anybody who's registered today will be getting a copy of this recording, and you can send it on. And attached will be links to all of the organizations present tonight if you would like to find out more, or indeed encourage your schools to get involved with the various organizations. But Carol, if anybody is interested, what should they do if they want to find out more about Young Enterprise?
Okay, we'll send out the link, but the key is, and again, as a parent, I know I don't do this. When I go in to talk with the parent-teacher meetings, the first question is, what's the score been in the tests? How's he doing? I, if anyone, should know, how are his skills? Does he work well as a team? You know, how are problem solving? What's his aptitude for those areas? So I think the more that we get parents asking those questions, the more schools will balance it out. Schools are often criticised for being exam factories, but it's also because those are the things that we as parents go in and ask about. So if we start asking and saying, how are you developing my whole child? How are you making sure that they're confident? How do they work as a team? Then we will see the schools will make sure that that happens, because they'll see it's not just something parents want, but it's something that parents will support time for in the curriculum.
How are you developing my whole child? I love that. I've scribbled that down. Rosemary, what should people do if they wanted to find out more about what you do, apart from check out the website?
Check out the website. Check out the website, and parents, get your companies, whoever you work for, to come and check out the website too, and sign up as a volunteer, as well as schools signing up to send their pupils.
Yeah, don't just think of your own child, I suppose. Let's think collectively about all the young people that we could help.
Exactly. And every time we talk to an employer, we get one of two answers generally immediately back. One is either their own experience or their child's experience. This is a problem that actually affects everyone.
Absolutely. It's a great point. Actually, we could all do more, couldn't we? And would probably reap the rewards. I'm sure it's a very rewarding experience too. Jenna, what should people do now?
Very
Check
true.
out where?
Very true. Yeah, I mean, I will send over the information for our Inspiring Tomorrow's Leaders, and there's lots of beautiful opportunities in there in terms of coming in and listening to the CIOB board, having a chance at chairing a meeting, having a chance at writing minutes for a meeting, come along to some of our site visits and see, you know, a company here in action. The CIOB also give free student membership to any students who are studying construction, and I'm always amazed whenever I meet with these directors throughout Northern Ireland, and they love to tell me back in the day whenever they signed up for their free student membership, and they still have it. So it really is a great way to support your career from those early days.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, my thanks to our panel today. It's been really interesting, and I'm sure you will find it incredibly useful. Before everybody rushes off, we have a poll for you now to decide what the subject of our next event should be. So in terms of future topics, to give us a steer and to make sure we get the right guests for each session, would you like a future topic to be how to help your young person choose a career, how to help your young person to be resilient? Would you like a Q&A with industry leaders? Would you like a Q&A with education leaders, with head teachers, with SIA perhaps, with the government? Let's go big. Or would you like something on the workplace of the future? So if you could all please select, I think you're only allowed one. I'm not actually sure. We'll see what happens. Try a whole load if you want, but if there's something there that jumps out, please select that now, and we shall tell you what the result is. It's very exciting. We need a drum roll. So here we go. All right. So there we go. Out in front, how to help your young person choose a career. An interesting topic, given everything that we've heard about helping them find their own careers and letting them be their own person. But that's something definitely that a lot of you are very interested in. And right behind there, we have the how to help your young person be resilient. So thank you everybody for taking part in the poll. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I hope you found it useful. As I said, recording will be available afterwards, sent on to you along with links to Young Enterprise Northern Ireland, Foresee Your Future, and the Chartered Institute of Building. My thanks to Carol, to Rosemary, and to Jenna, and to you at home. I hope you have a wonderful evening and you feel very inspired and uplifted by that. It was great. Thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.